Yeah, but it's an abusive relationship between the state and the population because there's no option to opt out. There's no accountability on the part of the state. There's no independent pressure on the state to balance the books in any way. They get to spend as much as they want and then look at the citizenry and say, right, well, you need to cover the bill. And if you don't cover the bill, we're going to throw you in prison. That's an abusive relationship. That's not freedom. I think it just improves your decision making on everything, because once you get Bitcoin, you're not going to unget it in the future. And it's such a mental unlock that you've basically said everything I've known up to this point was wrong. It's the first time in your life you'll have something you truly own. Don't underestimate the power of that. That you become self-sovereign by doing that. If you don't do that, you are not self-sovereign. You're not a Bitcoiner. You're a speculator, a fiat speculator using Bitcoin. It's like, once you realize that you're in a system designed to extract all the wealth and to steal your time and energy and happiness, ultimately, to feed the beast, then what does that realization unlock for you?
If you're enjoying the show, it would mean a lot to me if you had hit subscribe and leave a quick rating or review. It helps more people find these conversations and support the mission. This episode is brought to you by Stampseed, the premium solution for backing up your Bitcoin seed phrase. Paper won't last, SSDs can fail, and most steel options aren't built to survive real-world threats. Stampseed uses high-grade titanium and a precise low-tech stamping method that just works. Get 15% off with the code BTCStory at checkout. Mark your calendar as BTC Prague 2025, the highest signal Bitcoin-only conference in Europe, is happening from June 19th to the 21st. I'll be there speaking, and I'd love to see you there too. Plan your trip to Europe's Bitcoin capital and grab your tickets with a 10% discount using code BTCStory. And if you need help getting your Bitcoin off exchanges and into self-custody, or if you're ready to build a robust, bespoke inheritance plan, the Become Unruggable one-on-one consulting program, where you will work exclusively with me, is exactly what you're looking for. You can find all the ways to reach out to me in the show notes down below. Now, let's get started with today's episode. Welcome back to another episode of Your Bitcoin Story, the podcast where we explore how Bitcoin is transforming lives and helping people reach and claim their freedoms back. I'm your host, Gigi, and today I'm joined by a special guest who's been sparking conversations and waking people up in big ways. Joe Bryan is a Bitcoin educator and the creator of the now viral video, What is the Problem? A unique and deeply engaging story that reveals how many of the challenges we face today can be traced back to one core issue, the quality of our money. The video doesn't just inform, it connects, it resonates, and it invites viewers to rethink the very foundation of the systems we've come to accept. We're going to dive into Joe's journey, what inspired the video, how he approaches education in the Bitcoin space, and what does it mean to create content that truly moves people. Joe, welcome to the show. It's great to have you today.
Thank you, Gigi, and thank you for the nice intro.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for taking the time to spend an hour or so of your life to come yet on another Bitcoin podcast. But I guess I'll try to do it a little bit different to other podcasts. We like to focus more on kind of free flow, philosophical and non-scripted conversations. So just imagine I visited you over in the UK, Joe. We went to the pub for a pint and I'm just getting to know you.
Sounds good. It sounds good for a Tuesday afternoon.
That's right. Joe, let's kick it off. So can you tell us what led you to start questioning the system and eventually discovering Bitcoin?
COVID. Like many people, I think COVID changed everything.
It did.
We all ended up getting jolted out of our normal routines, and you end up. I mean, certainly I ended up just in a routine every day for years, and traveling to and from London every day with a family, young family, and you're trying to build a good life and so things. It's often you become
tunnel visioned.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I was extremely tunnel visioned, but you start to let things fade away when they're outside of your immediate vicinity. And so it's very rare that I think when you're on that sort of path that something so far out of left field comes along and sort of just nudges you to sort of spin in a different direction. And then if I can't think of another example other than COVID where it just impacts your life so explicitly. It's like right now, now you're at home, you're not allowed to leave. There's no commuting. Everything is different because everyone's forced to just be online the whole time. And then you've got the children and their schoolwork and everything gets thrown up in the air. And when that happens, you unavoidably just start to come across new things. Like your brain just is sort of jolted into more flexibility,
Into research.
and just having more, yeah, and just having more time. I
True.
started listening to podcasts and watching YouTube videos
Hmm.
about things which I hadn't done before because, I'd be traveling early in the morning, I'd be half asleep on the train, and coming home in the evening, I'd be exhausted replying to emails and these sorts of things. So, it carved out that extra little bit of time, which allowed me to start consuming more content, thinking in a bigger picture way about what was happening with COVID and how it was going to impact our business at the time, which was fairly dramatic, much like most businesses around the world to some degree or other. And then when you're forced to zoom out, you start to think about what's going to happen next or what's underlying this. And you start to think about A, then B, then C. And at the time, I just started listening to Real Vision, which was, you probably know, was Raoul Pal's thing. But back then it was a very different animal than it is today because it was focused on global macro from a traditional global macro perspective, not going down to meme coins and things like that, which you see today. So that was my first. I'm gonna say one thing and I'm gonna immediately correct myself. But that was my first proper introduction to Bitcoin, where I engaged with it. And then I started listening to him, doing some reading. Felt like we were going through that journey of discovery at the same time. Yeah, it's just been a slippery slope from there.
It's a deep,
to
deep rabbit
where we
hole.
are. Yeah, it's a very, very deep rabbit hole.
Do you remember, Joe, kind of what was the exact moment when Bitcoin really clicked for you? Like when you realized this is not just digital money, this is something much, much more important?
Well, initially, I viewed it from a global macro lens. It was just a very asymmetrical trade because you view it from a fiat lens. Okay, you've got this thing. It's a bit like gold. It's fixed in supply. There's debasement happening, benefiting from an adoption curve from a really low base at the same time it's being monetized. This feels like a good asymmetrical bet.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's not the same as arriving at a conclusion that this thing fixes everything, right? Those two sentiments are vastly different.
Mm.
But I think that first one is probably the more common way of your first realization about Bitcoin, rather than understanding or beginning to understand the subtle implications downstream of adopting
Yeah.
perfect money.
No, for sure. I agree with you, Joe. Kind of for me, it was kind of the fixed supply because it's, I believe, the first time in human history in the physical or the now digital realm where we have a scarce asset where there's only 21 million, there's no 21.1 million, it's just fixed. And I still, yet today, in the year of when we're recording this podcast, 2025, Bitcoin's been around for 16 years and people still hear about Bitcoin, but nobody they don't really do their proof of work to realize, wow, this is such a scarce thing. And getting to a whole Bitcoin is a big achievement, but just getting a little bit or leaping, like you're going light years ahead of the peers on the streets, which have 0.000 sats under their self-custody.
Yeah, exactly. But I think the absolute scarcity of this is the key thing. But that's hard for people to grasp, especially because when your mental model, one of the routes into Bitcoin is, well, it's just like digital gold. But you don't really think about new supply of gold, really. And you don't really have, unless somebody tells you, you don't really have an intuitive sense of how the supply of gold changes. You just tend to think all the gold is there and it's a hard asset.
And you can't even verify it. How can I know that this report says that
All the gold
X
is there.
amount was mined or it's stored there?
Yeah, yeah, but these are the sort of second level questions you get to.
Mm,
But even gold, I mean, it's 2% a year.
that's what they
Gee, it
say.
sounds nothing, but it compounds rapidly.
That's
It
true.
compounds rapidly. And so that absolute scarcity is a profound thing, and the implications of it, by extension, are what makes Bitcoin just unlike anything else. But that
And
takes time to sink in, or to really realize. And so, it took me a while to go from this is a good asymmetrical bet, because I was also bought a bit of gold at the time, because I was like,
why not diversify?
well, well, yeah, yeah. Well, it was also on the same bet. It's like they're printing loads of money, they're debasing everybody. I should buy some gold, but then I didn't actually get any physical gold. I just got an
A
email.
certificate. Oh, not even a
Yeah, you own
certificate,
some
an
gold,
email. An email.
but you have an account at a bullion vault,
Yeah,
for
yeah.
example. I said, I don't own any gold. I don't own gold. I've got an email. Right, I got an email saying I own some gold. Push comes to shove, I'm not really sure I actually have that gold.
That's true.
But these are the sorts of realizations that you get to as you go down the Bitcoin rabbit hole. It's a bit like self custody. It's like the more you think about it, and the more you just intrinsically understand why Bitcoin, the less and less edge case risk you are willing to take with your self custody. It's like that natural thing that just
The
eats
wave.
away at the back of your mind. It's like most people when they first buy it, it's the easiest way to buy it is through an exchange, or and then you have it in the account, and you think you have it,
You think
but
funds are Safu, but really they're not Safu.
yeah, yeah, but that's exactly like your bank account. It's like, oh, I've got it. The money in the bank is there. This is there. That's fine. And then the more you go down it, like, I don't think it's actually there. It's a bit like my gold email. It's not really there. And then you think, okay, well, I'll take self custody of it. You take self custody, and then you'll be on a single device, right? And you've got your seed words, and you're like, I hide these seed words. And then a few weeks go by, a month go by, 2 months. What if the house catches fire? Okay, hang on. All right, so now I can't write them down. I need to get some steel plates. And then a few months ago, what if I get hit by a bus? Or what if someone turns up with something, and I'm like, oh, I can't have single. What if the device breaks? What if the device is compromised? You start thinking about all these great edge cases, like, I can't do single sig anymore, and I need to multi sig. And I need to. What about this? And what about that? What
And
about?
then inheritance planning, spouse trading, the list just goes on.
Yeah,
Beneficiary
yeah, yeah,
trading.
yeah. But I don't think there's probably ever an end to
No.
the worry. There's no absolutely perfect solution, because it ends up just being trade-offs for different things. This is what happens when you go down. We've gone way off track here with this.
No, but it's good. To kind of pinch in on the self-custody part, I think, Joe, like the reason so many people still yet today hold their coins on exchanges is because, as you said, they treat it as their like digital crypto bank account. They think, well, I've been using my bank account ever since I got a card. I have my funds there. It's always going to be there until you go to log in and you're either locked out or it's been hacked. And then you're like, oh my God, it's too late. You got burnt. I think kind of people unfortunately need to go through the burnt experience to be like, maybe I should take more responsibility on it. And I'm telling this with a warm heart. I actually launched a month ago called a service specifically working with Bitcoiners to get their Bitcoin into self-custody. I called it Become Unruggable, because everybody gets rugged one way or another. And it's so easy nowadays to have self-custody. And as you just outlined it perfectly, you don't go straight to the 3 or 5 multi-sig from the get-go. Put into a single SIG device, get the hands of it, get your seed phrases, get the feel for it, and slowly you progress And the bigger your stack gets, the more kind of complex it gets. But also there's kind of it's a double-edged sword. You don't want to overprotect yourself, because then you're kind of locking out the people that will essentially get the keys passed on. Because there's like a riddle, then they need to be like, or a treasure map. You've buried this one metal seed phrase in one continent and the other one's the other way. But it's something that is essentially a must. Like, I don't know about you, Joe, but like, I'm very anti this whole ETF master trades and everything. Like Bitcoin, there's one thing: you buy a spot, or you buy it ideally peer to peer. You put it in cold storage, you have it in self custody, and that's it. That's the way it should be in my eyes. But then there's so much distractions about, oh, but I want to get some yield on it. And the more you study Bitcoin, you realize you don't need to get annual yield in it. If you just buy it and hold it long term, it will outpace any yield, and you minimize your single point of failure. May that be an exchange or whatever it is. So you brought up a very, very valid point. So thank you for it. Don't feel like you went off the tangent.
Well, we're just having a conversation, sorry. But Gigi, when you first bought Bitcoin, I bet you didn't see it as clearly as you see it today.
100% no. It was fully on exchange. I had it on exchange probably for about a year and a half back in 2017. Like, but I learned my mistake essentially. So
yeah, but this is why I think with the ETFs, it's
a learning curve.
It's a blessing and a curse, because if you own a promise to Bitcoin, you don't own Bitcoin. You just don't, especially when those promises are stacked on top of other promises in the financial system. I mean, if you own an ETF, you just own a share. It's exactly the same.
Just like in forex trading, it's a CFD, contract for difference. It's basically, I bought it at this price, that's my entry, and that's it.
That's all it is, until you have transparency to the underlying holdings of the ETFs as a matter of course, independently auditable by anybody at any point in time. Then you just can't have any confidence that they're actually there. And the centralization, obviously, of the holdings of all of these things within one or two big institutions.
Coinbase is the mega honeypot, if they have them, because I haven't seen any disclosed addresses. Have you, Joe?
I haven't been looking, but I don't believe there are any. But that's not to say that they don't. You know, I could have some sympathy for them not wanting to disclose where the honeypot is, perhaps. You know, I could see that argument as well. However, you know, the longer you spend with Bitcoin, the more and more you go down the path of, if you don't own them, if they're not in your self-custody, they're not real.
They're not yours.
But you were there for 18 months. So you were effectively an ETF holder for 18 months. But then look where you ended up. And this is the blessing side of it, because it opens the top of the funnel for many more people to have those first touch points with Bitcoin. In the same way that when I bought it, I bought gold at the same time, because I wasn't buying it for the reasons now I understand why I hold it. I was buying it because I expected the price to go up and then I could sell it. Right? In the same way I would do for a share.
Yeah.
Not to put away in cold storage and never sell. But in order to get people to the bottom of the funnel, you've got to get them in at the top of the funnel. And so the ETFs open up an avenue to acquiring Bitcoin to far more people than would have bought them without the advent of the ETFs. And
or exchanges. Not everybody, not the big boys, are not going to go do a selfie with their passport and get verified to wire like 100,000 to buy some Bitcoin. You're spot on that one.
Yeah. And so what I would like to see the ETFs is the switch to redemption in kind, so that you can then take self-custody of the Bitcoin underlying your ETF.
I believe there is one or two that already, I don't know if it's already out, but like they're looking to do that, which that would be a game changer, where you could enter as buying paper Bitcoin, quote unquote. But then once you realize that, you're like, actually, I want to self-custody this in my own multisig, and you can withdraw it. That would be a perfect case.
Yeah, I wasn't aware any had actually in the US had moved to that. If they have, then that's great news, and hopefully put some pressure on the rest. But I didn't know that was already the case. But yeah, I think the more people that have those first touch points with Bitcoin, the more people after
the better.
8 years end up talking on Bitcoin podcast about the importance of self-custody. So it's probably a good thing in the end.
it all takes time, as my dad always said. All good things take time, and with Bitcoin, because it's such a radically different technology that we've ever had before. Even like it surpasses like the telephone or like the internet. Like it's, you really need time for it to grill in, and you really need to put in your proof of work. As I said, studying it, reading books, going to meetups, speaking to people, really trying to piece the puzzle in your mind. And I'm not a believer of this concept, which is very popular in our community, orange pilling, because it's not like you take this magic orange pill and suddenly you see the whole power of it and everything's changed. I like to call it orange seeding, because you need to plant the seed and then you need to keep back and watering that seed, so that then the beautiful flower of freedom grows out of it. But if you're not watering that seed's going to die. There's no flower that comes out. So it's a constant, asking yourself questions and looking at different resources, such as, which will come in a second with your incredible work, which is, what is the problem? Like the perfect half an hour, 40-minute format, which has no Bitcoin in it, is just like, oh, that sounds interesting. Let me see it. You watch it and you're like, wow, like you kind of jump a few steps and you're ready, kind of, your mind is curious, activated, kind of, let me learn more. Let me look deeper into this.
Wow, that's great. It's like the seeding. You need to seed and then germinate, and then you
It doesn't happen on its own.
you cannot force people to learn about Bitcoin.
For sure.
And of all the people that watch the video, probably only a small percentage go on and then become Bitcoiners. But still a meaningful number. The people who don't become Bitcoiners will become Bitcoiners later.
That is
It's just
true.
that they're not at the right point in time, or the way the information is delivered doesn't sufficiently activate them to then go and be proactive themselves and put that small amount of effort in. But there's a percentage who will. And at any point in time, all we're doing is really just building extra layers of accessibility on top of the white paper, just gradually, until eventually we've figured out how to unlock the motivation of everybody in the population to learn about it. But one piece of content is not going to do that. You've got to come at it probably from 50 different angles in 50 different ways to unlock these
Chambers of
similar
curiosity.
similar communities. It's like, within Bitcoin, we have lots of people who are from an engineering background or from a finance background, because for people to have ended up in those careers, they tend to, not always, but they tend to have very structured, very process driven mindsets and thinking patterns. That's why you're attracted to science and things, because there is a right answer. A plus B is C. It doesn't equal D, and you can logically work things out, and therefore systems they can recognize a system that's broken. And then when you present a system which is perfect, they realize they realize it's perfect, but then they also realize how broken the existing system is. They begin to ask those questions that they'd never thought to ask before, because it wasn't on their career path, or it wasn't within their area of visibility. But then when you hold them up to evaluation, you realize just how structurally broken everything is. And it has a cause. And so if you're building an engineering system, you fix the problem. If you fix the problem, the system works. And, so it sort of explains why we have within Bitcoin those sort of fairly narrow personality and skill set. And it's expanding over time, but that represents only a small comparative set of the population as well.
Correct.
And so, like, how do we bring in the artists, or how do we bring in the linguists, or all these different pockets of people for whom that thinking isn't the key to unlock the Bitcoin realization? And so I consider the video just being just an extra layer of accessibility built on top of the Bitcoin standard and broken money and the price of tomorrow, and all these things which were built on other people's work, which were built on other people's work, which is built on Satoshi's. It's just unlocking the next subset of people who are open to engaging with Bitcoin. And a few months will go by and somebody else will create something which unlocks another different segment, and eventually it's everybody.
Yeah, I totally agree. With you can never force, like, a few years back when I really kind of understood the power of Bitcoin, I was just trying to shit it to everyone, from the waiter to the old friends that I would meet up with, and I'm just there like the crazy Bitcoin guy, just talking about Bitcoin, how it's going to change everything, and you need to jump on now or you're going to regret it. And most people then do nothing. Like to this day, those people still don't hold any sats. And at some point, like I came to a realization, I was like, you cannot like force this like a fist down someone's throat. Like you need to approach it at the right time with the right perspective, not too harsh. And it's more kind of like you did in your work, kind of showing the problem first and then showing the solution, instead of me trying to tell them, oh, there's this fantastic solution, but they don't realize there's a big problem at hand. And most people, I think this goes back to just the way the system is designed. We are never taught about money, which is the root cause of everything that's wrong in this world, is because our money's broken. And since nobody, A, doesn't know what money is, and second of all, they never question it because of the first point, they don't know what it is. We kind of live in this delusional world where people just think, oh, it's normal. 2% inflation is what the banks aim for, and it needs to go up. In Bitcoin, it really kind of, you start with the finances, but then you ask yourself deeper questions about like the nutrition, what you put in your body, about your exercises, about your rhythm of life, kind of, trying to focus. As much as I spend a lot of time in front of the screens, but once I'm done with my creative work, there's no Netflix and chill binging. Like I go read my book, I spend time with my kids, I go out for walks. Like I really try and intake the world. And it's fascinating how this code that Satoshi Nakamoto released and blessed the world with, like, changes your life fundamentally, starting from the money part, which is kind of the broken aspect of our life. And then it does like a full 360. It really makes you develop yourself into a better person, better husband, better father, which is, I find incredible.
But it does. It's like a personal upgrade. It is. It is. Bitcoin makes you become a better person. I think it just improves your decision making on everything, because once you get Bitcoin, you're not going to unget it in the future. And it's such a mental unlock that you've basically said everything I've known up to this point was wrong.
Which
And
is
it's quite
which is a hard thing to swallow for most people. Like, holy shit, like I've been lied to my whole life. It's pretty strong.
It is, but it's also very freeing.
Mm.
Because if you can get to the point where you could say everything I knew about finance and money and the world effectively was wrong, you then go, okay, what else have I been wrong about? And then when you start to think about, well, I've already let the biggest thing go. I've already changed my mind about the biggest thing. Changing my mind about anything else is now super easy.
It's a walk in the park.
What else isn't true? What else shouldn't I be focusing my time on? It's like, once you realize that you're in a system designed to extract all the wealth and to steal your time and energy and happiness, ultimately, to feed the beast, then what does that realization unlock for you? It's okay, well, I'm not going to do that. I actively know which direction I'm getting pulled in. I'm going to actively move in the other direction. I'm going to not do this. I'm going to not do that. I'm going to prioritize this. I'm going to prioritize that. I think it's inescapable that it wouldn't impact your decision making and your prioritization within your own life to a meaningful degree. You can also see this with just meeting other Bitcoiners in person. Everyone's so positive.
Yeah, I'm yet to find a Bitcoiner who's pessimistic and who's very depressed. I haven't come across one single one yet in all my 8 years.
Which is strange. When really the realization you've come to is the entire world is screwed.
And you become happy.
But it's having. I think it comes down to having that level of control. If I realize the situation I find myself in, it's better to know that and then be able to make active steps to protect myself, to protect my family, to protect the people I care about, and to turn that negative into a positive, because it becomes a competitive advantage for me and the work that I do, or for my family, or for quality of life, because I've done the work. I understand where we're going, and I have high confidence, very high confidence to where we're going. So when you combine those three things together, there's absolutely every reason to be positive, right? Because
very true.
It's only improvements from here. Even the current world may be deteriorating further. You know there's going to be this tipping point at some point in the future where more and more people wake up to what you wake up and go through that thought process in the same way that you have. And you know once they start that journey where they're going to end up. And if they end up there, then there's more people I think you and view the world in the same way, and then things are going to start to improve. We just haven't quite reached the bottom yet.
Oh, for sure. I think we're still like when I look at Bitcoin as a baby, it's like we're maybe not the inception stage, but like we're still a young like toddler. Like as I mentioned, like it's been around for 16 years and it's already in the top 10 market cap assets of all things in the world, which is already incredible in like a bleep of time when you zoom out. Like the human history that's been hundreds of thousands of years, and like 16 years, bam, it comes in out of nowhere and it just slowly trickles away and eats out the value of everything. Who knows where we'll be in 10, 20, 30 years. But surely, in my opinion, non-financial advice, but it's going to whoop the gold #1 mark for sure because of the scarcity aspect. I'm not putting a timeline on it. I'm not putting a fiat price. One thing, by the way, Joe, I didn't tell you on this podcast, maybe a handful of times in 100 plus episodes, we never talk fiat values. I always tell people one Bitcoin will always be one Bitcoin. And Bitcoin is not volatile. Fiat is volatile because Bitcoin has a static measurement of units. In the purchasing power, it's going up forever because the more people, as you said, discover it, go through that journey themselves, not being force-fed the information, they realize, wow, this is actually the asset that will make me self-sovereign. I don't know. Have you read the Self-Sovereign book, Joe, by any chance? But you've heard of it, right?
Well, which one?
It's called The Self-Sovereign Individual.
Oh, The Self-Sovereign Individual. Yes, yeah.
It's like
that was
30 plus years old book. It's like a really old book.
By Rees-Mogg's father?
I'm not sure. Maybe.
I'm pretty sure that was written by the father of a British politician.
It was written in the late 80s, early 90s. It was published, I think 92, 93, or mid 90s. But I've recently, about 6 months ago, read that book, and I was just shocked how it was talking about a world where, you claim back your sovereignty. You're not glued to one single country. You can go live anywhere you want. You essentially work and give your service or you sell your products virtually online and get paid in a digital currency. And I was like, wow, like this book was written about like the blueprint of a Bitcoiner's life. And it was written like in the knees. The Self-Sovereign Individual.
I'm just Googling it now just because.
So I was going to say, kind of for a long time pre-Bitcoin, people were like dreaming of, people that uncovered it. It was, right?
It was written by Rees-Mogg's dad. Yeah. But it's very, very prescient book. Very prescient.
Yeah. It's powerful. And the fact that it was written like pre-Bitcoin, as I mentioned, people for a long time, some people that crack the code that the system is corrupt and the money is broken, you had no alternative. Or Zeitgeist documentary, which I watched back in 2006, 2007. I was still a young teenager, but I watched the Zeitgeist and I was like, holy shit, this world is like, how can we escape out of it? And then just a few years later, Bitcoin came around. I was too busy playing my Counter-Strike and FIFA games instead of mining on my GPU, but that doesn't matter. I came around it in 2017. But the point is, people were always looking for a way out. And now with Bitcoin, you do have a way out. So if you're not pulling the trigger on the way out, well, I guess there's no one else you can blame but yourself because you're not putting in the time to learn more about it.
Have you read Atlas Shrugged?
Yes. Yeah. Incredible.
Amazing book. It's not a Bitcoin book, but it's pretty much a Bitcoin book.
Yeah.
And if people out there have not read Atlas Shrugged, I would thoroughly recommend it. You probably need a long time to read it. I think it's like 1,100 pages of small text. I would recommend listening to the audiobook while you do 50 hours of other stuff. But it is a wonderful, wonderful book. And it's along the same lines. And it is written in the 60s.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah.
Way before Bitcoin. But we're going off on another tangent here, Gigi.
We can go with it. It's a free flow conversation.
Yeah, but we tend to think about dystopian futures from books like 1984, and one's in the mainstream and written in the not too distant past. But I actually think Atlas Shrugged is the best representation of where we are today in society, and it's very hard for me to explain this without explaining the book a little bit more. And this is not an Atlas Shrugged podcast. This is a Bitcoin podcast. Now, I would caveat it by saying Ayn Rand, who wrote it, she birthed objectivism as a philosophy. So a lot of this book is really all her philosophical writings within a novel, but it's a wonderful book. And it's probably 10-20% of it you think that maybe that goes a bit too far. There's no mention of family or all of these things in there. However, the backdrop of it is wholly important for Bitcoin and the way that Bitcoin is eating the world, because it's set in like the pre-electrification, early industrial era, where there's tycoons and there's people. There are the producers and the looters, and the moochers and the intellectuals. Effectively, is the four parts of society. And I'd thank Alex Mann from Time Chain for bringing this back up to the top of my mind recently. He shared a video of a presentation he'd done. He did a wonderful job at this. But it is the book I have most enjoyed reading in the last 10 years, is that book. But what they effectively do is withdraw from society, withdraw their productive contribution from society, the producers. Because the producers are taking the risk. They are trying to operate in the free market. And then you have the looters, which is the bureaucratic class, producing more and more rules and regulations, and focused on equity, in removing any and all ability for people to outperform in any way, or to have benefits that accrue to them because they put the effort in, or because they were inventive, or because they contributed in some way. And then eventually people, the businessmen, the productive people, just start disappearing from society. Just one day they just disappear, and then the factory just stops. Everything starts to grind to a halt. They just withdraw completely to Galt's Gulch, I think it is, some mystical place where it's hidden in the mountains, where all the productive people go, and the society just collapses. And they refuse to work for anything other than the gold that they use. And so it's like, you can think about the parallels there between the fiat world and Bitcoin. So while you're engaging with the system and you're feeding the system, you're contributing to the system. But if you take that step out, there's a whole other system, and the whole other system values what you value. You can interact and you can pay them with this new money that you both value, that the other people don't use. But it tends to be the productive people, and it hastens the ultimate inevitable decline of the looters, because the looters can't survive without the productive.
No.
And it's not a direct comparison, but I'd encourage Bitcoiners to read that book, because you will see today's society reflected so very clearly within it, and the overlap between the adoption of Bitcoin and the growth of Bitcoiners to that movement within the book is very.
Well, just to add to that, in the future, I see more and more, especially smaller businesses or individual like sole entrepreneurs, offering their service exclusively for Bitcoin. Like, if you want to pay me in fiat, for example, with like my consultancy that I do, I wanted to at the beginning just do it fully just Bitcoin based, but then I realized, well, if someone just holds their Bitcoin on exchange and doesn't know, like, I'll give them the option to pay me in fiat, but it comes with a surcharge, because out of ethics, like, I don't want the dirty fiat, and then I need to deal with it, and I need to account for it, and I need to convert it, and I need to send it here and there. So like, I see really people in the future offering their service for Bitcoin because they want something that retains its value, and at the end of the day, that is instant settlement. Working through banks, I've had many merchants on this show, and software engineers who were talking about kind of settlement. weeks, in some cases, in some countries, it takes months for the merchant to actually get access to that money that someone paid. Just tap their card on their POS device. And for a small business, who can wait a few weeks? Like when you have suppliers, when you have employees to pay, like it's a fast paced thing. And after COVID, where things just went way overboard, everything is so expensive to maintain. Prices are going up by the month, but the only thing that's not keeping up is the salaries. And especially now in the other demographic, not the business owners, but like people that are really, sorry for the word, slaving away in their 9 to 5. And the last time they got a salary increase was BC, not before Christ, but before COVID, can simply not keep up with the lifestyles. And then they need to get an extra job, and then the wife needs to go and work and put their kids in daycare. And it just defeats the purpose of us as humans being here on this planet, enjoying ourselves and giving value back. But we are kind of just, as you said perfectly, feeding this, the beast, the belly of the beast, whereas just sucking out all the value, all the energy and time just to keep the machine running. But at some point, people will just say, enough is enough. Like, I don't want to play this game anymore.
People are. And
Yeah.
people are. And the people who step away, pound for pound, are the more impactful people. And so it doesn't take much. It doesn't take much for the cracks to start to accelerate. Because the cracks are already there, they just constantly paper over them. Like the outcome, even if nobody stepped away, the outcome is already known. The dollar's going to zero. The pound is going to zero. Euros are going to zero. We all know this. Like, it's not a controversial statement. You put money in the bank for 100 years, GG. Purchasing power is zero after 100 years. You're hard pushed to find someone who disagrees with that statement. Okay, so the currency is going to zero. What are you going to do about it? You can
buy some gold.
You can go and get an email. Yeah, you can get an email. Or you can buy a house or get a painting, hang that on your wall, hope that is a better store of value. But when you think about it critically, and you go down that list of options, and you're trying to solve for the thing that is absolutely scarce and the thing that no one can take off me, there's only one. There's only one answer.
Unconfiscatable, which is literally another aspect, not the scarcity pact, but that nobody can get it. No government, no institution, no most powerful Elon Musk, the richest man today, potentially on paper, cannot get access to my Bitcoin or anyone's Bitcoin, which is super powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you solve for those two things, there's only one choice, and that's just logic. So we've already agreed that the currency is going to zero. So therefore everyone's forced to make an alternative choice. And what's the best alternative choice? Bitcoin.
It's very simple, Joe, and it's crazy that most people don't see the simple answer. But I guess, as we discussed on this episode, like, it takes hurdles. It doesn't just appear. You see the Bitcoin, you're like, that's the answer. Like, screw the world. I'm resigning next Tuesday, and gonna start stacking my sats with whatever's left in my bank account. That's depleting every month, anyways.
If it was only that simple to build massive conviction, we'd all have been there a lot. We would have all been there a lot sooner. But to take the example I gave before of Atlas Shrugged, the parallel here is withdrawing contribution to the fiat system. It is not withdrawing from society, which is a big difference. In the book, they effectively let society collapse because society couldn't function when you remove the productive people. You can't tax your way to productivity. There's no such thing as, bureaucratic innovation or governmental innovation. It's a nonsensical thing. But for us, for Bitcoiners, we get to materially upgrade the world while we're living it. We just don't give any of the energy to the fiat system. So we can live increasingly on a Bitcoin standard or support people trying to move to a Bitcoin standard. In some areas, some countries, it's easier than others. I cannot do that in the UK, for example.
Not yet.
No, yeah, but that time will come. And the nice thing about this transition is that you tend to have the most productive people. And the most productive people build things.
Yeah.
They fix things. They do things. And they also can work with other people. And so we have an increasing number of people who are critical thinkers builders, motivated, engaged, who are becoming wealthier, becoming greater in number, against a backdrop of political and regulatory uncertainty that is declining. And individuals run companies, individuals run countries, and then you see a country flip from anti to pro, and then it never goes back. A company gets fired up into the 100 companies stacking Bitcoin on the balance sheet from a public company perspective. There's thousands private companies, more and more every day. You just don't see them.
Yeah.
Right? It's like this slow domino effect
Spread it out.
gradually seeping out into society. And yeah, it gives you massive confidence that
we're on the
Bitcoin
right
is
track.
It's unstoppable because everyone makes their own decisions and everyone's just arrived at this thing independently.
And we all have the same consensus. Every 10 minutes there's a block that nobody can produce more. There's fixed amount of Bitcoin that's mined every day, 450 Bitcoin a day. And that gets cut in half every 4 years. And no matter how much you like it or don't like it, nobody can change it. We have a single consensus. I had recently a guest on, I can't put my finger which guest it was, but we're talking about like it was the first time in human history that we have global consensus. No matter if you're Orthodox, Muslim, Catholic, or Hindu, we all abide by the same consensus, which is once again yet another super powerful thing about Bitcoin, not just the scarcity aspect.
That is a great point. Bitcoin solves that as well.
Yeah, which is really hard, where we find ourselves in like every year it feels like it's more a divided world, may that be, religion, race, living class. Like the politicians and kind of the global system is really looking to kind of divide and conquer, the strategy they've been using for like centuries. And they still think in the digital era they can, keep on playing the same movie tape and people will still be clapping away and enjoying it. But like now there's a shift in how the global order is being built. And as you said, I'm also with you 100%, Joe. I'm very bullish on what we are building as Bitcoiners. And the more people that join the network, because once you get Bitcoin, there is, as you said yourself, there's no going back. It's not like, I've done enough reading, I've got enough Bitcoin. Ciao, boys. Going back to my old life. It's a one-way street. Like once you're in, you're in. And that's the real, as your fellow Brit, Daniel Prince, said on this episode. He said, that's the real numbers go up he loves, not the fiat numbers go up. But the amount of people that join the network, that's the real numbers go up. Because the more people, and they're happening every day, as you said, may they be small, medium-sized enterprises, private companies, individuals, but the more people that join the network, it's way beyond unstoppable. And that's why governments realize, well, we can't like oppose this and ban it because we're just kind of digging our own grave. It's much better. And not all countries are the same. Your particular country of UK is like still like kind of very anti-Bitcoin, and I don't know what the agenda is there, but still they're kind of trying to oppose it. They haven't fully banned it, but like at some point they'll realize, wow, if we push people too hard, like the productive people that we were just talking about, Joe, are going to pack up and go wherever they're invited and feel better and welcomed with their fresh ideas and their hard work ethic. So in the future, I think it's really going to be kind of the governments will be fighting to invite productive people instead of the modern day government politics, which is how much can we tax these poor people to get as much, fiat balance in our treasuries. But then, it's not a healthy way to live.
No, it's absolutely not. But it's how the system works. So the system is meant to function this way. That's how it's constructed.
It's the way it was designed.
Yeah. When the heart of the system is theft, it corrupts everything. And there's circa 10% theft every year in the system via the central banks, debasing the money. And so how do you expect things to function?
They don't.
You shouldn't expect things to function because the system's broken. The engineering is broken. So you don't expect good outcomes if the engineering is broken. And so you cannot allow the population to focus on the money. You have got to keep them focused on something else. So it has to be focused on red team versus blue team, this religion versus that religion, or this socioeconomic group versus that socioeconomic. I mean, I could list a bunch of more controversial ones over the last 5 years as well, but it's all just distraction.
It is.
None of this is none of the us versus them problem at all. It's an everybody versus the central bank problem.
And they don't want us
But you don't.
divided. That's why they do all of this. That's why they play the game they play. Because if everybody understood the truth and stood up and said, "I don't want to participate in the system anymore," well, as we don't want to ruin Atlas Shrugged anymore for you, but like you can see what happens. Like society collapses in no time. And I think they're really afraid about that. That's why there was so much suppression about Bitcoin for a decade. Where they're not that dumb. It's like I believe maybe they didn't realize the full potential of Bitcoin, but it was always like, there's this new system coming up, like we need to suppress it, mine banning, like ban mining and many different aspects. But like then they just kind of lost the grip on it, and now, as you said, it's way too late. Nobody can shut it down because as long as we have nodes running around, like to shut down the Bitcoin network, you will have to find where Gigi lives in his multiple locations and shut off those last nodes. Because even if all nodes go down and I still have one node, it's going to be a slow ass network, but it's still gonna confirm transactions. And that's the beauty of it, that there is no central big institution that controls and is the shot caller. And and the other part that I wanted to pinch in on, Joe, where you mentioned kind of the 10% theft with the central banks. That's where it only starts, dear listeners. Then you have the payment processors. Then you have the rent seekers, the so-called brokers, that there's the guy that's selling, he gets a cut, the buyer gets a cut, and then you get a cut. And then the whole VAT shenanigans and taxation and income tax and value-added tax. It goes from 10% to like 50, 60%, which you zoom out and look at your 12 months in a year, you're probably, if you're lucky, working 6 months of the year to just give away that money to all these institutions that are here to make the world a better place and, make us a prosperous society, which is actually choking us. Crazy.
Yeah, and you see that the tax take just goes up incessantly over time. It's because structurally it doesn't work.
The house always needs more money.
The ability to print as much money as possible and issue as much debt, then you're always going to be short of money to pay back the debt.
Always.
And then you have to lump it on the citizens. Either lump it on the citizens out of the productive contributions, or you have to print it. That's it. But given that you can print it, why does the population pay anything? The system doesn't make any sense. The system doesn't make any sense. Now, if the population didn't pay something, then it would the mask would slip, and everyone would realize this is just a Ponzi scheme.
The emperor is butt naked under the robes. There's nothing there.
Yeah, and so as Bukele says, you pay taxes to uphold the illusion that you need to pay taxes. You don't. The government just prints money itself. It doesn't need you. It just needs to uphold the illusion that it's not just printing money, so that the purchasing power doesn't go to zero faster. It's still going to zero, just so you can keep the charade going for
a little bit longer.
But at what point do you if you work for somebody else and you get to keep zero of what you work for, you're a slave. At 100% tax rate, you're a slave. Are you a slave at 99% tax rate?
Yeah. You're 1%. You're 99% slave. It's like 50%. If you're giving away half of it, you're half a slave. You get rid of the slave status if you're not working for someone and giving away your hard-earned money. In my opinion, that's my way how I see it.
Yeah, but it's an abusive relationship between the state and the population, because there's no option to opt out. There's no accountability on the part of the state. There's no independent pressure on the state to balance the books in any way. They get to spend as much as they want and then look at the citizenry and say, right, well, you need to cover the bill. And if you don't cover the bill, we're going to throw you in prison. That's an abusive relationship. That's not freedom.
Doesn't sound very democratic to me.
Oh, well, it can still be democratic. It can still be democratic, right? As long as you have, I don't know, 30% of the population who are willing to back it, you can probably still win the election.
Yeah, true.
Doesn't make it legitimate.
And you never voted, right, Joe? You never voted if you want to pay the taxes that you're paying, right? It was put on top of you. This is the way life is, Joe. And if you don't pay them, as you said, you end up behind bars, which is cruel.
And things could be worse. We could live in a banana republic dictatorship,
Mm.
where the dictator borrows huge amounts of money, siphons them off into his own accounts, and then goes and absconds to some place around the world that no one can get hold of him. And then the population still have to pay the debts. Like the IMF come in and restructure and get them to change their economy to feed the beast. Things could be worse, but it's just a matter of degree. We're all being abused by the state. It's just the degree to which we're being abused by the state. And this is why Bitcoin is so important. Is that you still have to pay your taxes unless you're prepared to leave. Many people can't leave. You still have to pay your taxes. You don't want to be in a prison cell. So you do everything above board. But you just own Bitcoin. Just own Bitcoin. Contribute to it, to supporting people who build Bitcoin businesses, who want to espouse freedom and critical thinking, all of these things. But eventually countries, as you say, will realize that it's a competitive advantage to embrace Bitcoin. And the ones that do will outperform massively. And they'll suddenly be very glad that large portions of their population are Bitcoiners. It will go from being a bad thing to being a very good thing for the country.
We want all the productive people coming in and actually doing something and creating new stuff.
Yeah, that's how you grow. That's how you grow
Economies.
prosperity. The default is poverty. And this is where I think the West has got to, perhaps in its thinking. There's two things. We've given up on the pursuit of excellence. Excellence is no longer aspired to or celebrated. Everyone has to be equal. Everyone has to be equal.
Which is terrible.
Outperform. Yeah, equality is not freedom. We don't celebrate success in the way that we would have done 20, 30 years ago. It should be inspiring others to pursue similar paths rather than trying to tear people down. But it's tricky. It's tricky in the UK. I apologies. I've forgotten what my second point was. I'm pretty sure I said 2 points, and I can't remember what the second one was.
Well, the first one was really solid with the excellence and kind of how we're brought up to be, intermediary, average. Just do your average and you're good through. What comes to my mind is actually the latest Bitcoin book that I'm reading now by my good friend Alexander Svetsky, called the Bushido, the Bushido of Bitcoin. Have you read the Bushido of Bitcoin?
I haven't. No.
Actually, let me pull it up for the viewers. So this is probably for anyone listening and is thinking what next Bitcoin book to read. The Bushido of Bitcoin is an incredible book because, as it states up here on the book, it says this is a code of virtue for a world on a new economic standard. So it talks about once we make it on the Bitcoin standard, it's not what is Bitcoin, how is Bitcoin going to change. It talks about values, morals, excellence, and what you just said, kind of that mediocrity is not freedom. That's exactly what Svetsky says in his book, where we as a global race have been so suppressed to just do enough to get by. Like we are not really standing up to the full potential of ourselves. And this book is also, it's 500 something pages. So it's not a quiet one. If you want to, there's audiobooks as well. So for the guys that don't want to go through too many words, but that's, since we've been shilling a lot of books on this episode, The Bushido of Bitcoin is an excellent one, which goes in line with what you were just talking about, Joe.
Yeah, well, great. It's on my list. I don't know about you, GG, but I have a stack of about 20 Bitcoin books because they're produced now faster than I can consume them.
They are. But that's good, right? Because going back the full circle to the beginning of our conversation, it's good. Not everyone is interested or is going to read the same book, listen to the same podcasts, watch the same YouTube videos. As long as we keep on pumping out the information and spreading out to different demographics. That's why, hence, when I launched my podcast 2 years ago, people are telling me, come on, Gigi, another Bitcoin podcast. We've got so many of them. And that was 2 years ago. Now we have even more, and they keep coming on. But I'm pro Bitcoin content. May that be essays, may that be books, may that be podcasts, may that be just resource websites. There's never enough because there's so many people to get the message across to. The more we have, the faster we will succeed on growing the network and getting people on kind of this Noah's Ark, which in my eyes is the only way to save yourself from the collapsing system.
Yeah, and it's got enough space for anybody who wants to join, anybody
100%.
who wants to step aboard. And you've got a set of passengers that are actively holding out their hands to other people. We've just got to try and help as many people see that there are some outstretched hands and get them motivated
and push the message out. I guess a nice way to kind of conclude this conversation, we went in many different routes, but kind of what came to my mind in the last 10 minutes that we were speaking, Joe, is one of my favorite quotes from Einstein, where he said, we cannot fix the problems with the same mind that created them, right? And that's how we are in the system, where this system was designed to just suppress and suck out the money and the energy and the livelihood of its citizens. And now with, thank you, Satoshi, with Bitcoin, we can just pull out of that system and just focus on building a better world, a more fairer one. And in the Bitcoin world, on a Bitcoin standard, unfortunately, the occupation of a rent seeker is non-existent. You can't just give no value and suck away Satoshis from people unless you're a hacker group, which you're also not welcome with that mindset in our community. But just generally, jokes aside, you need to provide value. May that be a service, may that be a product, may that be whatever it is, artistry. As we said in the beginning, how do we get more artists? And imagine if there's more and more painters offering the paintings in Bitcoin, not in fiat values, or musicians doing creative stuff, or doing concerts where it's based on a Bitcoin system. Like, that is going to be how you get rewarded for the efforts and your creativity that you put in, where in today's world, it's really hard to play the fair game and make a good living. It's all about, how do I cheat the system? How do I take a little bit more from this guy and that guy? It's always a win-lose situation. And in this new Bitcoin world, it's a win-win for all. If you're not winning, then you need to recalibrate what you're doing, because at the end of the day, everybody in this boat, as you said perfectly, I like that one, Joe, I'll use it. We have enough space for whoever wants to join, and it's not limited capacity. If you want to come on and embrace it, and you're welcomed, which is even greater. You have people that will support you, resources, hold your hands. I mean, it's a no-brainer to jump in and maybe not just go down the deep end of the pool, but just start embracing, start learning, start dipping your toes in the water to get a sense of it, because you're already miles away advantage over your neighbors that still dismiss it as just another crypto coin. It's a Ponzi scam, but actually the real life is the real Ponzi. But you realize that a few years after you've been in the rabbit hole.
That takes time. That takes time, doesn't it? But the more Bitcoin podcasts we have, the more books we have, the more videos we have, it shortens that realization time for
100%.
people. It's much easier
100%.
now than it would have been 10 years ago, 5 years ago.
For sure.
And it'd be much easier in 5 years' time. We just got to keep building layers and making it more accessible to people.
We are. Joe, I just realized, as we're kind of slowly rounding up to our time, never got to find out what is the problem came about, but I guess there's a lot of other podcasts that you were on where you broke that down, and we kept it a little bit more philosophical as I wished for. It was, so I guess the last question that I ask all of my guests, Joe, and I'll ask you as kind of as a closing question, what is one piece of advice you would give to someone that's only starting their journey today, Bitcoin journey?
I mean, it's probably where we started it. You have to take self-custody.
Nice.
And it doesn't mean buy a load and take self-custody and then screw it up. It means probably buy a little bit, take self-custody, and figure out why you need to take self-custody and how you take self-custody. Because without doing that, you're missing the point of Bitcoin. And that is it's a scary moment for people when they realize there's no safety net. Doing that for the first time. But it enables you to actually take control. It's the first time in your life you'll have something you truly own. And don't underestimate the power of that. That you become self-sovereign by doing that. If you don't do that, you are not self-sovereign. You're not a Bitcoiner. You're a speculator, a fiat speculator using Bitcoin.
Nicely put. I couldn't agree more. As the guy that helps people move into self-custody, and you are probably the first guest that said,
there you go,
take self-custody. I swear, guys, I did not under the table bribe Joe with some sats pre-recording. This was a heartfelt advice, but I totally agree with you. By you taking self-custody, you see a different perspective of it, and you cherish every sat much more. It's not just some numbers on a screen. I think that's excellent advice. That's excellent advice. Joe, you were going to say something?
I was just going to say thanks very much for having me, Gigi. I've really enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah, no, likewise, Joe. Thanks so much for taking the time. Where can we send our listeners that want to get in touch with you perhaps or follow you? And where's the best place? I guess YouTube is to watch the video, but to get in touch with you, what's the best place to send our listeners?
Yeah, well, I would encourage anybody who hasn't watched the video, please watch it and then share it with other people, because it's the thing you can send to absolutely everybody. And it doesn't even mention the word Bitcoin in the title or the description. So you can post it on every family WhatsApp and no one can get annoyed with you for
Proper
talking about
Trojan
that
horse.
Bitcoin, to that Bitcoin stuff until they get to the end and I mention Bitcoin. But by that point, they've heard the content, so they're hopefully on the way anyway. So watch the video. What's the problem? Go to satsversusfiat.com. What's that? SATSVSFIAT. So YouTube channel, the website, and X all have the same handle, Sats versus Fiat. And that's where the video lives, where the community lives, where all the translations of this into 40 odd languages all lives. And the materials, if you want to take the materials and then go and orange pill your friends or orange seed your friends with, in your languages, we've got the presentation in 25 plus languages, including Serbian and
Nice. And Slovenian. I know you
Russian,
have it in Slovenian as well.
Slovenian and
Nice.
Russian
You've got all
and
my
Russian.
categories.
Yeah, you could just go on a European tour, just giving this presentation, Gigi. But it's there for everybody. This is all open to everyone. And so
Amazing.
please just share the information and try and get as many people to the starting line as possible. And then if you want to connect with me, I'm on X at Satmojo, SATMOJOE. So Satmojo.
Perfect. Well, we'll have all the links in the show notes. Definitely go check it out. If you haven't seen Joe's video yet, definitely go check it out. And as Joe said, and I'll concur, definitely go share it with the friends and family, because the whole point, if we really want to get the world on a Bitcoin standard, we got to do our deed. Even a small share goes a long way, as long as there's more people discovering it, questioning, and joining the freedom movement. Joe, once again, thanks so much. I really look forward to seeing you in person in just a couple of months in Prague. I look forward to continuing our conversation in real life, which is always much better. And to do a quick plug to BTC Prague, if you still don't have your tickets, use BTC Story for 10% off. But jokes aside, definitely make your way to BTC Prague, which personally to me is my favorite Bitcoin conference of all time. I don't know, Joe, if you went last year or this is going to be your first year.
I wasn't able to go last year with the timing of my daughter's exams, but I said I would definitely go this year. And the nice thing is, I've been invited to speak this year as well,
I
which
know,
is
right?
amazing. That's unreal. So
it's going to be,
I'm
and
looking
actually
forward to it.
we're sharing that cherry popping moment as well, because I'm actually also, I'll be speaking, either moderating or speaking. It hasn't been decided yet, but I'm actually taking the stage as well, which is the first ever. So yeah, definitely if you want to see Joe on stage, if you want to see Gigi on stage, but more importantly, if you want to connect with the people that are really building the new sovereign freedom world, make sure to come to Prague. You're not going to regret it. And who knows who you meet. You might meet your next business partner, the love of your life, or at the end of the day, you just might learn something new about Bitcoin. But yeah, thank you everyone for listening, and we will see you on the show next week. Take care, and until next time.